Ghana generates over 5,000 metric tons of waste a day, and the consequences of this cannot be exaggerated. What then can we do as individuals and as a nation? And what would the National Plastic Waste Management Policy mean for us as a country? Let's find out in this episode of News Connect. My name is Akosua Ofewaa Opoku, and this is News Connect on Citi TV. Stay tuned.
I work with the Ministry of Sanitation and Water Resources as a behavior change and communication specialist.
Sir, first of all, what do you think we should expect in the government's announcement with regards to sanitation management, which has to do with plastic?
The issue of plastics has been with us for some time now, and we all know the problems it's causing on our beaches, in our gutters, on our farmlands, everywhere. This policy is a right action to take. What you should expect in the policy should deal with how do we put in systems, infrastructure, litter bins. The Ministry of Sanitation and Water Resources has started putting in place some litter bins, but we need to look at this one on a much bigger scale, on a much national scale. So the infrastructure. And then in the homes, the situation currently is that all the litter or all the waste is put together in one litter bin. So everything is sent to the landfill site. And when it is sent to the landfill sites, the plastics are added up to the other kinds of waste. And we know that plastics do not degrade easily like the other kinds of waste. So even when the landfill has been closed, the plastics will take a longer time to degrade. So they will continue to be there. So we need to segregate the plastics from the other kinds of waste. So we need to look at the infrastructure from the household level. Are we segregating our plastics at the household level? If we are doing that, then we'll be making some progress. So we'll look at the national segregation policy as part of the national plastics policy so that the plastics will be segregated at the household level. Then we're also looking at the institutional level, in our companies, in our offices, in our schools. Are we doing segregation in our schools? So segregation should be a major component of this policy. Then when we are done with the segregation, we are done with the infrastructure to deal with the waste along the streets, the waste in the household, the waste in the institutional level, the households, the offices, the schools and all that. Then we also need to look at enforcement critically. Because if you tell people to have 2 litter bins in the house and they do not have 2 litter bins or they do not have 3 litter bins, you need to enforce. And also if you say people should not litter, you need to enforce. If you put litter bins along the streets and people are not using it, or people are carrying their waste from their homes and putting it into the street litter bins, you need to enforce. So we need to look at some enforcement mechanism. Also, at the industrial level, what kinds of plastics are the industries churning out? You will realize that sometimes even with bigger bottles, they make it disposable. All these things will be inimical to the recycling regime. So you need to also enforce the laws at that level. That what kinds of plastics are permissible, what kinds of plastics are not permissible. Some time ago, the Ministry of Environment introduced the oxo-biodegradable plastics. The industry didn't comply. Enforcement couldn't succeed. So it means that they went back to producing normal plastics, and these plastics do not degrade. Even if we are not comfortable with the technology of oxo-biodegradable plastics, whatever kind of technology we bring, we need to enforce. So the Ghana Standards Authority, the Environmental Protection Agency, these institutions must be empowered to be able to enforce the law when it comes to the introduction of new technologies into the plant. If you look at the packaging schemes now, everybody is moving from glass bottles to plastic bottles. Is that the right way to go? If we don't have a buyback system in place, if we don't have a retrieval system in place, should we allow all companies to move from glass to plastic bottles? That's a question that we need to address. And these are some of the areas that the National Plastics Policy must also look at.
We as people must ensure that we do the right thing. When government comes up, I hope government will have the ability in this law to ban a number of them. it should be progressive to give people the opportunity to get rid of what they have, and then new strategies should be put in place. So if we are having bags which are biodegradable, which now people have to import, it's a process, it's time. There are some people who have shipped in some plastic bags already. Economically, if somebody says, look, it is bad for them to lose their livelihood, fine. They should now start getting something which is biodegradable. And all of us should put in the effort to try and get something. So it should be over a long term. We should all get like dispensers. We should all have our flasks. Those who are in one type of business, move to another one. Space to space. I always tell people, space to space. It died. Did anybody come and say, why is government killing space to space? The people moved on. If you are now going to do Momo or Vodafone Cash because space to space is dead, they move on to something else. In the same way, if your business is in plastics, if you are going to bottles which are more sustainable, you move into that one. So your business is not necessarily dying. If you are doing bottled water and you are now going to do the dispenser kind of water, we should allow people to transition into something which is better than what we have now. We've been told plastics are a nightmare. By 2030, if nothing is done, we'll have more plastics in the sea than fish. We will have more plastic in the sea than fish. Everybody is doing it. We like this, when you're drinking, somebody says if you're drinking Coke, it is nice when it's coming through a straw. Drink from the bottle. Why? The straw it also doesn't degrade. We should stop it. We should ban straws.
We need to put in place a national communication system or a national communication strategy to deal with that. And we are not looking at 5 years, 10 years. You are looking at 20 years. So that when you begin with the kids from now, by 20 years, the generation that will be in place will be so conscious that the issue of littering will be dealt with. Now, if you are talking about funding these kinds of things, how do you fund it? Do you want to go cap in hand every time to industries and go and write sponsorship letters for them to fund? No. You need a national funding scheme. And that is why since 2013, the industry players have been pushing for the release of the National Plastic Waste Recycling Fund to be set up. Well, it has not been set up yet, but if we are having the opportunity of bringing a national policy in place, that funding regime must be critically taken care of, so that, because for a long time the policy was passed, the National Plastic Waste Recycling Fund policy was passed, it was not implemented. The industry players have been agitating, but it has still not been implemented. Are we going to put in place a system that we can implement, that can run immediately? So that is something that must be contained, and the action must be very clear, so that we know that within 6 months after the launch of the policy, we should be able to have the National Plastic Waste Recycling Fund in place.
So even the ordinary Ghanaian has a role to play when it comes to waste management and plastic management as well. This has been another episode of News Connect, and my name is Akosua Ofewaa Opoku. This is Citi TV. Keep watching.